Mark Leno. And this is the whole thing. This was the guy who actually got stuff done. This was the man whom everybody should have been proud of. It's a battle up in that supervisor's office. You know this more than anybody. But he's a native of Wisconsin, attended the University of Colorado at Boulder, and spent, who knew this, 2 years in rabbinical studies at the Hebrew Union College in New York. Who knew that? Nobody. Mark was appointed to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors in 1998, right when I was there, and was the first openly gay man to serve in the California State Senate, and has devoted he really has devoted his life to making this community better. Anybody associated with the City College, go ahead and give this man a round of applause. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome Mr. Senator Mark Leno.
Glenn Washington for mayor. Thank you, Glenn, for outing me as a rabbinical dropout. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. It is a real honor and pleasure to be here. Thank you, Nancy, for the invitation. And also happy 10th anniversary of the Winter of Love here in San Francisco. And we know how love is. It just spreads itself around the world. So I have 3 short stories for you. The first one is my own evolution in support of equal marriage rights. So this goes back to the early 1990s, around the time that the Hawaii Supreme Court, the first in the nation, had ruled that it's unconstitutional to deny loving and committed same-sex couples marriage licenses. And as I got involved with the issue, first as an advocate, activist, and then as an elected official, I always thought for myself and for my community, I wanted the bottom line, the same rights, benefits, privileges, and yes, the same obligations and responsibilities of marriage, but I wasn't quite sure that we needed to fight a war over a word. But what changed my heart and my mind irrevocably was the November 2003 decision of the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court. That High Court ruled in November of 2003, not unlike the Hawaii and Vermont Supreme Courts before it, that there is no constitutional basis for this denial of marriage licenses to same-sex couples. They went on to say that our nation's history has taught us that separate is seldom, if ever, equal. But then they went on to say something I have never forgotten and never will. They said that the only remedy to this identified discrimination is marriage and marriage alone. Because, they said, any other parallel constructs, such as civil unions or domestic partnerships, would, in their words, perpetuate a destructive stereotype that suggests there's something inferior and unstable about the way same-sex couples love. I'd never thought about it like that before. Step back from the issue for just a few feet and ask yourself, what's the one thing all of us walking this planet have in common, irrespective of our race, creed, color, religion, nation of origin, language that we speak, sexual orientation, gender identity? The thing we all have in common, the thing that makes us human beings, is our ability to love and our desire to love another human being in an intimate and committed fashion. That is our common humanity. And so if through our public policy and lawmaking, we're going to have government determine that some of us love good enough, and we're going to give you folks marriage licenses, but you other folks, yeah, you love, but not good enough, and you're going to get domestic partnerships, civil unions. And it was at that moment that I realized I was prepared to fight a war over a word. And it was 10 years ago yesterday, with the support of Equality California and the National Center for Lesbian Rights and a long list of other supporters, ACLU among them, that I introduced the first equal marriage rights bill in the history of the country, 2004, February 12th, as I was on my way to San Francisco to start marrying the first 100 couples with Assessor Mabel Tang at City Hall. So 2 days later, Valentine's Day, Saturday of 2004, I drove back to Sacramento for a rally for marriage equality, and I was introduced to two gentlemen, late 60s, who had been together for 50 years. They had literally met as teenage boys in the 1950s and had spent their entire lives together through the 50s and 60s, dark decades for gay and lesbian people, 70s, 80s, 90s, into the 21st century. And they asked me if I would arrange to marry them at City Hall in the coming week. And I said, of course, I would be honored and pleased to do it. And so we did just that. I married them. Thrilling experience. And about a year later, the couple is Marvin and Bill. Bill unexpectedly died of a heart attack. Now, even though they'd been together for 50 years, had been married legally in California until the Supreme Court told them their marriage was null and void, had been registered as domestic partners for over 10 years. Because Marvin, the surviving spouse, did not have a marriage certificate in his hand, he could not access Bill's health care benefits, his pension benefits, his veterans benefits, his Social Security benefits, into which they had both paid for almost 50 years. And as a result of all of this, all of these benefits, of course, coming instantaneously to a surviving spouse, Marvin could no longer afford the rent on the home that he and Bill had shared for 37 years. And in the midst of grieving the loss of his 50-year partner, this 70-year-old man was now homeless. And when I tell people this, they say, that's not possible. I say, this is exactly what we're talking about when we talk about equal marriage rights under the law. And due to a very supportive community in Hayward, Marvin was taken care of and became ever more of an activist until his last day, which was just 2 months ago. The last story I want to tell you is a personal one, in that I was visiting my then 83, 84-year-old parents in Florida around the time of that Hawaii Supreme Court decision in 1993 or so. And even though I'd already been out to my parents for about 25 years, we'd never had a conversation about marriage. And so on the drive from the airport to their home, I raised the question. And I asked them if Doug, my partner of 10 years who died of AIDS in 1990, and whom they love like another son, I said, if Doug were still alive and the two of us wanted to get married, how would you feel? I said, I really want to know. It'll help me in my activism. And there was silence. After about a minute or so, my father responded and said, you really want to know? I said, of course I do. Of course I do. Please be as forthright as you can be. I wouldn't ask otherwise. And he said, well, now that I think about it, I have to tell you that I wouldn't be all that excited to tell my golfing buddies that my son was marrying another man. I said, well, thank you for telling me that. I'm sure it's not easy for you to say that, but I wanted the truth. I said, now let's take another step. Why? Why would you not be elated? Why would you not be the first to uncork the champagne and throw a big party for these two men you love and whom you want to see as happy as they could be? He was quiet again for another moment or so, and then he said, I guess I'm a little ashamed. I said, thank you, Father. This is not easy stuff. And this is what the coming out process is all about, that we've been going through together for 25 years, getting rid of those last vestiges of shame. So we got home. A couple days passed. That Sunday night, I was packing my bags to go back to San Francisco. And I could hear my father in the next room on a telephone conversation with apparently a good friend of his. And what I heard from my father's end of the conversation was, why should your son have any more rights than my son? It's un-American. Equal treatment under the law. And I thought, in 24 hours and 25 years, from shame to pride. And I realized I had finally come home. Thank you.